Thank you. Welcome. Today, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for watching my videos and listening to them. Just to give everybody kind of an update, this is now my full-time situation. So a lot of things have changed. If you could please subscribe and like any of the videos that you do like, I would greatly appreciate that. What I got for you here today. Everyone in my town is disappearing. They call it Sulaaphoria. This is part 2. The author is Unreal Phenomenon. If you didn't watch part 1, you should probably watch part 1. I have that back in my video list. Without further ado, let's get into it. I arrived at the address. The ground ruptured in slow, bleeding mouths, old sprouts spitting the frost, thin skin of the earth. They must be hardy, I thought, to push through the cold like that. The snow was streaked oxblood, capillaries branching through the white before seeping into a drainage ditch. The house loomed ahead, unfamiliar despite its nearness to the bookstore. I had never noticed it before. Could I have? Had it been there? The steps bowed under my weight, spongy rot tenderizing my feet before swallowing me whole. I knocked. The door trummed under my knuckles, its knots flexing like muscle. Beneath me, the earth exhaled, a tremor rippling through the soil like a dog shaking off fleas. A woman opened the door. She was thin as shade, a wisp, her presence held only by the tension of the doorway, the weight of her own gaze. With a cold flick of her wrist, she beckoned me inside. I stepped over the threshold. Smoke lilted in the air, incense, copal. I wasn't sure whether to cover my nose or my ears as the voices crackled through it, weaving into the air like threads through old fabric. "You can hear it then?" the woman asked. I hesitated. "There's no use hiding from it. It seeps into your pores. Maybe if you burn them all off, that would stop it. Maybe you'd achieve," she struggled. "Call me Ilseth." Sure, I muttered, struggling to focus. The walls seemed to press closer, inhaling, exhaling. What is happening? She studied me, her expression unreadable. "To you or to the town? Either way, questions aren't really part of your role." She rifled through a drawer, pulled out a cone of incense, struck a match. The sound rang out sharp as a gunshot. "Please don't light that." She blew the match out instead. The silence filled with something heavier. I feel faint. "You'll grow used to it. The voices. Strange to call someone a seer, really. You don't just see, you hear. The achieved are soniferous, you know." "They can't hear me?" She glanced at the ground, as if listening for something. "I don't think so, but they are aware. It's like a flood of thoughts after a dam had burst. They rush through the pocketed earth, filling holes, dispersing into the water, into the air." I swallowed hard, then asked the question that required no courage, only inevitability. "What is Sulaaphoria?" Ilseth laughed, a short, breathless thing. For the first time, her placid expression cracked. "I don't know," she admitted. "The best I have is this. People are made of water, right? And it involves water, or vapor." We were in the dark, drowning in metaphors, circling endlessly, unable to touch the center. Words could only scrape at the edges, could only mimic meaning. Ilseth watched something settle over me, a recognition. "Let's go into town," she said. "I want to see with you." She turned towards the door. "We'll meet with Father Gratian." The town had unraveled, as if my absence, which only lasted the setting of the sun, had been mistaken for years. A sense of expiration. Waterlogged houses sagging under their own weight, bloated bodies out of buildings, slouched into themselves. Mildew cars sinking into rot. The town felt thin, stretched at the edges of itself, on the verge of sloughing away like dead skin. I opened my mouth to ask again what was happening. Ilseth, already knowing, said, "You see now, the town has always been a veneer. Life and living are veneer." I couldn't understand her. What is being covered? "What did you see that night at the bar?" My stomach twisted. "How did you know I was there?" "It is my post to witness all occurrences of Sulaaphoria," Ilseth said, "and to monitor the Sulaphorians." A word I had never heard before. It whisked about my mind, frictionless. But my thoughts dissolved as we reached the monastery. The gate loomed before us, a wrought iron mouth waiting to be fed. Elsith took my hand. Her skin was damp. "The worm gets thinner the more it eats." She turned my palm over, studied it, as if assessing its worth, as if appreciating, for the last time, what would soon be gone. "I don't know if there's just one of them, or if there is one in everyone." She let my hand go. With resignation, she said, "The phenomenon is not miraculous." Father Gratian's monastery stood in stark defiance of the town. It was extravagant, ancient. Its presence made the rest of the world feel flimsy, as though the town had been built from paper and regret. At times, memory softens the past, makes it golden, makes the present seem duller by comparison. This was the opposite. The monastery was raw, unvarnished, more than I had expected. Awe is something found with age. I rested on a web of aqueducts, their veins pulsing with a copper-tinged flow. The tributaries fed into the monastery's foundation, treading through its bowels. Some glistening, slick and damp, others had dried into brittle husks, rusted with time. As we crossed the yard, the air thickened. It frothed, boiled over with voices. I faltered. Elsith studied me, her grip cold. She guided me not toward the door, but toward a rung of aqueducts where a thin red stream ran, smooth as oil. Metallic mist filled my nose and mouth, so palpable I thought I could spit blood. My skin buzzed and itched. I could hear them, every voice. "Take one," Elsith said. The stream churned, 1,000 whispers tangled together. If I focused, I picked apart the current. I could separate them, like fish in a stream. A pull, gentle at first, then stronger, like something unraveling inside of me. A thread yanked from my ribs, tightening against my spine. The hum of voices sharpened. One surfaced. A steady, endless murmur. Montgomery, Juno, Phoenix. Mr. Klein, my third-grade teacher. I remembered the day he achieved. It hadn't been planned. The whole class had drawn pictures of him and taped them to the walls. An unspoken, spontaneous act, as if we had all known, somehow, that it was time. When he saw them, he cried, and as he cried, he dissipated. We played in the classroom for hours before anyone thought to tell the principal. I let go of his voice. I let it slip back into the current. The pull inside of me loosened, leaving something behind, something hollow, an ache deep in my chest. Another voice, a true hum, tuneless, ceaseless, like a song in the shower. Then another, a wretched, broken sound, gagging, wet, raw, relentless, gasping between retches, porcelain splattered with bile, the sound of someone choking on themselves, over and over. I recoiled, the sensation in my chest twisted. I tried to ignore it, to let it pass. It was just another voice, just another one of them. The sound followed me, tangled in my ribs, stuck in my throat. I tried to push away, to let it dissolve into the current. It refused. Somewhere I had heard it before, much later. Too late. I would realize. Melody. The table gleamed under the candlelight, its gold-rimmed velvet heavy with dust and age. Gem-encrusted chalices stood like reliquaries, their contents unknown. A bowl of Venus bulbs pulsed faintly. Nestled among them, metal-nosed pipets. Father Gratian sat at the head, framed by shadows, his chair too grand for the room. As if he had been placed there by something older than the town itself. Elsith and I sat opposite of each other, waiting. His mantle was clay-hued, heavy with black tendrils threading up his chest like a second circulatory system. Something about him made my skin tighten, an unspoken expectation presenting against my ribs. An urge to reach out, to touch his hand, to be granted absolution for sin I had not named. Had they spoken of me before? Had Elsith told him what she had seen? Father Gratian did not blink, only shifted his gaze towards me and raised his hand slightly, as though granting permission to speak. "You wish to know if and why you can see the worm," he said. A tome lay before him, thick and decayed, its cover worn into facelessness. He found his page by way of a colorless leather strip, the pages crackling like dry leaves under his fingers. "When did you last enter this monastery?" I haven't, I said. A slow smile spread across his lips, something thin and unreadable. Yes, I suppose you wouldn't recall. Not everyone has the privilege. His reach into the folds of his robe appeared to withdraw nothing, then held out his hand, palm upturned. Mimic my gesture, he said. I hesitated. Still, I obey. I placed my hands on his. The moment our skin met, he moved. His fingers slid down, closed around my wrist, a sudden, crushing grip. His knuckles cracked, blood surged to my fingertips. I flinched, tried to pull away, but his other hand was already rising from beneath the table. A scalpel. I jerked, body twisting, but Ilseth's hands were on me now, with thin fingers pinning my free arm. The blade met my palm. Pain whitewashed my vision. I might have screamed, I couldn't tell. My body locked down. Blood ran down my wrist, seeping into the tablecloth, dark as spoiled fruit. With a pair of forceps, he reached into the wound. He pulled 3 black seeds. He held them between his fingers, turned them into the candlelight, then set them before me. Your answer, he said. They washed and bound my wound. I felt like a captive, bound not by chains, but by inevitability. There was nowhere to run. The seeds had been in me for years, an inheritance, a gift, a burden, a baptism meant to nullify the potential of Sulaaphoria, to still the water inside me before it could ripple. It was in my blood, the reason I would never achieve. Was Sulaaphoria a punishment, a sin, judged by who? My parents had spared me from it somehow, a mercy or a theft. There are things to show you, Father Gratian said. Pay attention to the walls, to the paintings. Elseth, tell her of them as we walk. He moved forward, and I followed. Elseth trailed behind me. We left the hall where we sat, stepping into a corridor that pulled deeper into the monastery's belly. The air changed. It felt closer, denser, like water gathering in my lungs. Dread settled over me like a second skin. I knew then I would not leave the monastery alive. Ilseth's hand dipped into her pocket, fingers curling around something hidden. A small thing, a final thing. She would use it, I was sure. Should I resist? We stepped forward. The floor was covered by a long red tongue of carpet, swallowed by the dark at the corridor's end. Ilseth spoke low, her voice weighted, her gaze downcast. The wall to the right holds the witness, every one of them back to the town's beginning. The left is the holy see of Sulaphorism. Every leader. A pause. Father Gratian is next in line for Sulaph. The words were strange to me. I had never known Sulaphorism to have a structure. Not like this. Not in sermons. Not in school. It had never been formal. It had only been present, woven into breath and water. We reached the end of the hall. The door, old and sagging, waited for us. Father Gratian gestured to the final 2 canvases before it. Here, he said, pointing, is Ilseth. A portrait, her face rendered in thin, dry strokes, eyes dark as wounds. And here, he said, turning to the black canvas beside it, will be yours, Jessica. The door groaned open. Inside was an altar, a single pew. Behind the altar, a mosaic. Green shoots burst from the earth. Blood rolled down a hill in slow, heavy drops. At its base, shallow gunflectors knelt, mouths open, tongues stretched to catch the crimson flow. Behind them, golden-orbed figures loomed, their lips wet, their bodies vaporous steam rising from the surface of the lake. And in the sun's place, a writhing mass. Pale, faceless, squirming towards the ground in shimmered rays. Father Gratian gestured to the pew. I sat. I stared. I wanted to feel something. Faith, reverence, joy for Sulaphorism. But I only felt awe and nausea. Ilseth and Father Gratian bowed their heads, whispering to each other, their voices low, indistinct. Ilseth reached into her pocket. She pulled out a Venus bulb, its skin thick, gelatinous, the texture of waterlogged flesh. Beside it, she placed a pipette. She knelt. Father Gratian stopped behind the altar, standing over the bulb, over her. He raised the pipette in one hand, the bulb in the other. The pipette pierced the flesh of the bulb, sliding in like a feeding mosquito. A squeeze. A globule of crimson siphoned into the vascule. With this embedment, a seer will be seen, and a witness born. He pressed the liquid past Ilse's lips. Her body went glassy, shimmering like oil on water. Then she melted up, rising into the air, partitioning, dispersing, becoming mist. A rent opened within her chest, the flesh yawning, pulling apart. A thin strand of worm listed between the orbs of her unraveling body, drinking down every drop of her existence. In flashes, the mist revealed her. Fragments of memory, slipping free like spent film. Ilseth, kneeling near the lake, watching as her parents waded in, were swallowed, gone. Ilseth alone in her home, 10 years old, lying in a puddle of spilled water, crying, waiting to be taken away. The worm turned, a weightless, thoughtless presence shifting towards me. I lurched back, my breath trapped between a scream and silence. A useless reaction. It already found the wound on my palm and slid inside. Unreal phenomena. Awesome second part. Until next time, I am the Meat Grid Masochist. Farewell.